She's pointing at her. And then she's going to be pointing at me. Oh my God! The Girl Who Cried Her Eyes Out is currently streaming on Tubi, and it was written and directed by Eugene John Boleta, and it was written by Fabrizio Fonte and Deborah Ricky, with a concept by Tess Ricky. Okay, are we going to get into the minutia of who did one particular bit of dialogue, and who did the additional dialogue, and what is additional dialogue anyway? Oh, stuff like, hey you, get off that, and why not? So, yeah, a bunch of friends go into the woods, they break into a state park, and they camp there, they tell a story. Well, Celine actually tells a story. She's the witchy one of the group that does tarot card stuff. You know, because there's some tarot card or some kind of magic card thing there, and she tells a story of a girl named Caroline Woodman who will be stalking them and going so good, not sweet, Caroline. Now, Caroline's a little girl that was tortured by some kids while, I don't know, during the witching times, I guess back in Salem. It was filmed in Connecticut, though, so I don't know how close they actually were to Salem, but nevertheless, Caroline basically ends up being found by Maddie, who is pretty much the main character, played by Mary Blake, and after seeing that, basically, Caroline ends up stalking them. Kinda, but also not really, because this is 90 minutes with about 40 minutes of material. Some of the weirdest editing I've goddamn seen. They don't even bother showing any of the violence, which, okay, that could be due to budgetary constraints, or nobody wanted to take any bumps, or whatever. I don't really know, but look, it features a bunch of people that are trying to get their start in films, and there's nothing wrong with that. Get as many projects as you can. Everybody's got to start somewhere. That's okay. There's nothing wrong with that. Get some friends together and make a horror movie. The problem is you should make a horror movie better than this. This is still by no means the worst horror movie that I've seen this year, or even in the top 10. But it's one of the laziest, I'll say that much. It is on Tubi if you want to check it out. But yeah, it really just involves a ghost girl eventually stalking some people, and character motivation switching from here to here to here. Characters get together, and I don't actually really remember their names because they're not distinct at all. There's nothing against the actors at all. It's nothing against the cast and crew, which was probably pretty minimal. But yeah, it's pretty much just a bargain basement basic bitch of a concept that is stretched out to 90-something minutes. It also reaches a conclusion everybody can see coming from a mile away. Or 10 miles away. Or, look, the bottom line is if you're going to do a movie like this, you got to lean into the fun. You shouldn't treat it so seriously. Unfortunately, this movie treats itself way too seriously. But then the attempts at comedy don't work, so it's really odd. That being said, I am going to be getting into spoilers because there are a few things I want to talk about. But yeah, this is pretty much just a generic demon girl possessing movie where a few little things happen. You could tell there was certainly, an attempt to make things occur. None of it was any good, though. That being said, 3, 2, 1, and spoilers. So, yep. Friends go to a state park, they wake up a ghost girl, and that's about it. So, we have a bunch of them in this giant van. One's going to toss out some recycling. I came up with the line, reduce, reuse, and recycle the dialogue, because there's a lot of recycled dialogue in this. Maddie is kind of the one that's picked on in this group, which actually kind of ties into how Caroline was picked on by the various children. She was living in the woods along with her parents at a place away from town because the mother was barren. She couldn't have children, and she did, and then this ended up happening. And Caroline basically was tortured to the point where she was lost in the woods. She cried her eyes out. And then ever since then, when people tried to find her and possibly do things, like torture her, she was a ghost, so she would kill them. All this is told through dialogue, by the way. Court is kind of the jock dipshit of the group, and I mean the character. I'm not... Anything I mention about the characters here, by the way, has nothing to do with the actors. I don't fault them at all. But yeah, there was telling the story. There were settlers and shit here. That expert dialogue here. Great dialogue. Much wow. So yeah, Celine basically tells the story of Caroline. Then they play Truth or Dare. Maddie ends up in the goddamn woods. Earlier they mentioned the Blair Witch. This is more like Book of Shadows, Blair Witch 2. except that at least had a little bit of effort put into it. So Maddie ends up encountering the ghost, and then the ghost eventually follows him. So you get intermingling with some people. Some are cheating on their significant others. At least I think. I don't actually really, remember committing that many characters to memory. Max ends up getting killed at one point, hilariously. He goes to find out what the noise is in his room. The door slams and he screams. By the way, this thing basically takes place in just a few locations, which that's fine. If you have ingenuity and you have enough to basically make a concept like that work, you can do that. This movie doesn't. This movie meanders. It meanders a lot. Caroline basically just ends up stalking them gradually. I mean, this has got to be like the slowest moving ghost. Like, it's actually almost impressive how little occurs throughout this entire movie. What a slop fest is what I wrote down. Maddie's starting to panic. She sees blood in the shower or whatever. I hate when that happens. Get blood in the shower and then you got just all this crazy stuff going on. And then, Norman, I told you to stop bothering the guests. Who is with who and why do I care is what I noted. There's an exchange between Court, another guy. I think his name's Greg. Yeah, it's Greg. There's another guy named Landon. Not Michael Landon. We're not going with that. We don't have a movie starring Michael Landon. That would be tough because I think Michael Landon's been dead for like 30 years. Nevertheless, there's like a reference to Monster Squad. They reference a lot of movies here in this, and it doesn't really go anywhere. And it just seems like these scenes don't actually have any cohesion. Because basically what it comes down to is Maddie is the one that ended up inadvertently seeing the ghost first. So now she is basically marked. And yeah, that's about it right there. We have characters that end up dying. Celine ends up freaking out Jess, and then Jess ends up bleeding from the goddamn eyes. There is one funny line where it's like, why are her eyes bleeding? Oh my god. I don't know how many takes they did, but that's the one they went with. Good grief. So, yeah, we just end up getting characters being offed, but mostly it's just the ghost pointing, doing that, and that's about it. Celine tries to do a seance. That doesn't go well because the ghost demon girl immediately breaks the circle. I guess Celine didn't learn from this old lady seer that we see a little bit later. That didn't work out. Court then, by the way, has the weirdest character, switch. He thinks that Celine killed Jess, so he's going to go kill her. The other people try to talk him out of it, and then he ends up trying to be the hero at the end. None of these motivations make any goddamn sense, by the way. So let's yell a lot, and then Landon decides to do something very bad to one of the women. I believe Kim. Don't do that. Don't do that to anybody. No means no. Yeah, they go see the old seer. The seer basically says, I can't help you, but here's what I can tell you. Go to the woods and plead your case, and maybe she'll leave you alone. That's basically the gist of what she said. So they do. But then Landon decides to kill people. Because he realizes it wants you, and now we're gonna stab each other. But then Landon's dead, and Maddie ends up killing Kim, and then Maddie goes off with Caroline. That's really it. That's how bad the editing is in this, and that's how bad the formatting of this whole production is. So yeah, it gets an F. It's not good. It's not good at all. I've seen worse. This was just so bland and so basic. Anyway, agree, disagree what I said? Like, share, subscribe, Twitter handle, and letterbox handle in the description. I'm John Rentlin. I'll see you soon.